Wednesday, the 4th of June, 2025. In the room, we have Councillor Kneebone, Strange, Story, and Maher. Thank you for your attendance, and Councillor Downard is online, I believe.
Morning.
Morning, Makao. How are you? All right, so agenda's been circulated. First thing, we'll open with a Karakia. Can I ask Janine if you would mind? Karakia Timatanga. Thanks.
Morena koutou. Whakatakata hoi ki te uru, whakatakata hoi ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai, he hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora.
Thanks, Janine. Second item on the agenda is apologies, and I have received no apologies. Nobody else got anything to report. Can I have a move of that, please? Is that you, Stu? Yes, move that. Thank you. Seconded, Pamela? You don't have to? Okay, nobody here. That's good. Thank you. Confirmation of agenda. Agenda has been circulated. Pamela's moved. Thank you. Second from... Nobody wants to second it? Okay. It's fine. I'll second it.
Mr. Chair, can I just confirm for members, so a couple of documents circulated separately just in terms of what we're looking at today. So the first report on Te Ara Tupu, there was an old version included in the agenda, so that has been circulated separately as an addendum, so hopefully you'll have that. And then also the attachment for the financial performance monitoring report that has been circulated to you as well, just to check that members have those updated versions of documents with them.
Thank you, Janine.
Yep.
Okay, I assume I've got the updated ones. I've certainly got the latest of the other one. Okay, thank you for that, Janine. Health and safety statement. Also, confirmation agenda we've done. Thank you. Carried. Disclosures of interest. Anybody got disclosures of interest? If not, we will move to the next agenda item. Health and safety statement. Everybody's familiar with that, so take that as read. Thank you. And minutes for confirmation of receipt from the Finance and Service Committee of the 6th of March 2025. Mover for that, please. Move it. Nobody wants to move it. Seconder, please.
Yeah, I will. Yep.
Thanks, Makao. All in favour? Against, carried. Thank you. General items of business. Te Ara Tupu performance report. Neville. Good morning and welcome. Page 37 on your agenda items.
Morena, councillors. As the chair has pointed out, the report that you've got today came through as an addendum. Unfortunately, it was an issue and it uploaded the prior month's report. I will just try and put the dashboard up. Yeah, it's not what I wanted to show you. Right, I'll start again. While I'm doing that, I'll just give you a couple of points taking the report as read. And somewhere in here, I've got the dashboard. So overall, the performance has been steady across most of the focus areas, and it looks like we're on track to meet most targets by the year end. I guess our culture focus area is one of the areas that we are looking at and monitoring quite closely, and at risk of meeting that target due to 4 off-track measures. Annual leave balances have out of scale, I guess higher than we'd like them to be. Time to fill vacancies is taking a bit longer than we would want, and active culture goals and the leadership development program are slightly behind, which means we've got to focus more on getting those culture goals through a more of an education process than anything else. Having problems finding my presentation, I'm sorry. try again. AI is trying to keep to convince me to start helping and save the planet by buying some products from Microsoft instead of showing what I'm trying to put up on the screen. So it's not very helpful, I'm sorry.
At least you're having the same problems. I'm having the same problems at home.
Are you?
Yeah. It's taken over.
It's a little unusual what this is doing. It's only just happened since I came in the chamber, so I'm struggling to get that dashboard up. But look, the dashboard is in the report anyway, so I won't. There's no real change in what you've got in the report itself, and that is on. That's on page 5. Just in terms of the new measures, so we've got 2 new measures that will be reporting in starting from 1 July. Corporate emissions, so this will sit under the excellence focus area, and we'll track progress against the 2030 emissions reduction target, which is a 68% reduction from our 2017 baseline. So that's now been incorporated and will flow into that dashboard presentation from 1 July. We have a new measure which we introduced yesterday at the Waikato Tainui Joint Management Committee meeting. That was the iwi feedback measure. We're going to trial that with Waikato Tainui and with Te Arawa, which we're meeting with on Friday. And that will help to give us a view using the NPS methodology, which we also use for our customer scoring, on how well our iwi engagement quality is performing. So that will be reviewed on a monthly basis through a staff forum, and that information will be provided to council in the first period after the 1st of July. In terms of the focus areas, the 5 focus areas under culture, our pulse results are pending, and so we just recently resurveyed all staff, and that information has only just been really reviewed by ELT and is to be distributed to staff very shortly. So those will impact 6 of the culture measures once we get them incorporated. I've already talked about annual leave, so it's up from 15 days to 29 at the high end. By 15 staff, to 29 staff, and now have greater than 240 hours leave. Something symptomatic probably about the time of the year, being the middle of winter. However, staff or managers are being asked to maintain a strong focus on getting those numbers down. Turnover is down, so it's a positive indicator. It's now to around about 11%, so that's dropped significantly across directorates. And the time to fill vacancies, which I mentioned a bit earlier, is 60 days, which is 15 days over our target rate. Not 100% clear on the driver for that, but it's something that we'd like to bring down even further. And the active culture goals that our staff are carrying at the moment are only 48% of staff have them, which is a bit unfortunate given the time of the year we're at, where we're starting to assess performance against people's achievement of their goals. So there's a training plan to be delivered to improve that uptake. Our customer scores are performing well. We've integrated the regional transport connections information, and we're getting better consistency around how that's being presented. We've had a slight increase in policy-related complaints, and some public transport complaints are down. So our annual target is of 144 complaints is likely to be missed. We're currently at 143, so on last count. So that number's a bit dynamic still. In terms of our internal client timeframes, those are now down, and we're close to meeting our annual target. So that's about how well we're delivering internally to our staff on the services and the support that they ask for. We've had strong engagement in the digital space with Facebook growth. It's strong. And we're getting inconsistent feedback on our website performance. So that's an area that we're focusing on as well. In terms of the excellence measure, the Enterprise Work Management Program, which you would have heard about previously, Janine is the sponsor of that program of work, is driving improved project oversight. So we're seeing an increase in projects being registered in PSOTA as a result of the attention that program of work is bringing. You'll recall the Te Korowai program, which was the excellence program. We're at 72% of the 66 actions that were identified from that program being completed, and some are tracking ahead of schedule. So we're pretty pleased with that. The goal is 100% completion by the end of this month. In terms of innovation, the portal submissions are strong, with strong uptake, particularly from the ICM and Customer and Community Services Directorate. And submissions that we're seeing coming through the portal include both innovations and continuous improvement. We're having so we've got cost time savings that are being reported through that portal. However, they are indicative only, because our emphasis is mostly on participation and improvement culture. However, those so that measure is a little bit subjective. So I thought I would raise that, but it is it is encouraging to see that more of our staff are using that methodology to show us what they're doing. And that final measure, the Te Ao Māori measure, we're seeing increased participation by staff and learning opportunities. In terms of the specific JMA measures, Waikato Tainui's JMA has had some positive developments recently, including the Climate Change Alliance and the work we're doing on the expanded JMA provisions, which will come back to Council in the very near future. And for Raukawa, we've also had a strategic work program and development with them, which we're now launching and have got well underway. And they're also incorporating the Climate Change Alliance into their work as well. We recently introduced, I think I might have mentioned, the new iwi feedback mechanism, and so that's with Waikato Tainui yesterday and coming up with Tarawa River Iwi Trust at the end of the week. So just a quick about the attachment 1, the Te Korowai improvements update. The highlights from that, the CE KPIs are now aligned with strategic priorities and the LTP, improving transparency. Strategic goal reporting, so our measures are mapped to strategic goals and the climate action roadmap, so we're starting to see that alignment come through, and that will be further enhanced with the enterprise work management program and when that starts to really kick in, which we're expecting to be around September, October of this year. The financial strategy now integrates the infrastructure to strategy, and external reviews are certainly influencing the direction that strategy is taking. In terms of capital works, we've got enhanced project management capability now, and better governance to address carryovers, which has been a perennial problem, as you know. In terms of risk management, we've got training and software improvements underway, and the KPMG audit recommendations are being implemented. In terms of elected members and your own development, self-reviews and professional development plans have been introduced. I don't have clear oversight on how well that's going and how well that's being adopted, but certainly the process is there for elected members. And I guess from an iwi engagement perspective, as per the Te Korowai review, cultural competency development and improved communication mechanisms are in place. So that's my summary of the whole report. Hopefully you find that useful. Apologies for not being able to get the dashboard up for you to have a bit of a look at. That's my own technical incompetence showing up.
We'll forgive you for that. And thanks to your report, much appreciated. I've just got a couple of questions, if I may. Number 2, you've identified that there's been significant improvement in the 5 measures. Is there any reasons that have been identified for that? Because it is quite a step up.
Yeah. Look, it takes time, these things, as you would appreciate. And we've had this methodology in place for a few years now. And we've got a bit of a historical knowledge base has developed. And I think what it's showing is it's been a sort of a gradual seep through the organisation that some measures are more important than others. And so staff and managers focus on those because they can see how they can affect them. But in doing so, they also understand what some of the other measures mean. And it has been just a gradual and ongoing influence of raising awareness and addressing some of those key points. We've got some deliberate leadership, particularly from Emma, who obviously presents here on a regular basis. It's her baby, at the end of the day. And so she is quite forward with that presentation of information and always presents to the managers forum, which we hold every 5 or 6 weeks. So I think it's just an ongoing assault, really.
Thanks. You mentioned corporate emissions. Does that refer to just corporate, or is it enterprise-wide emissions in terms of
Yes,
60% improvement, 68% improvement?
Yes, it's enterprise-wide, so it's for our building, for our vehicles, for our flood pumps and those type of things. So everywhere that we've mapped carbon emissions being generated by the organisation, then the strategies around how do we reduce or offset that.
So does that not include public transport?
Oh, no, it wouldn't. Though Phil's the best person to answer to that, no doubt, but there has been obviously a deliberate electrification of the fleet, and that's moving at a reasonable pace. So, but I don't have any insight into what reduction in carbon emissions that's achieved.
Okay. So should that be included or not? It's not appropriate to include.
It's certainly a great suggestion, and it should be. There is room for that. Absolutely.
And the last question I've got is just to clarify, you said that end of June is the drop dead date for the 100%. Are you confident you're going to meet that?
I don't have any evidence to say no. So just based on the, so the attachment 1 has all the breakdown of all of the areas. Confident is, was a word I was told never to use too lightly. However, I think there's a very good chance that we're doing really well. I think the measure for the prior months was up to 74%, so it's now sitting on 100. So end of the year will tell.
Thank you. Angela, you have a question.
Oh, more of a clarification probably, just around the public transport emissions. And I guess at the moment, currently, we're not electric vehicles because we're still in the process of getting the fleet that way with the new contracts.
You've got one.
Of course, Taupo and Waipa are electric buses, but I guess fundamentally, the more people on the buses and patronage is looking fantastic. That's less cars on the road, so less emissions from that. So, maybe Phil could add anything if he needs to. But I'm not sure that's a discussion for here, whether it comes into the climate corporate targets.
I've got a particular reason for asking that question, because I know zero emission vehicles, and I might want to make sure that we're capturing the data correctly, that's all. So I think it should be reported here, because if we're reporting emissions, then that's mantra, if you like.
And if I may, just through the chair, I think you're right. That is a difficult equation, and I think it'll take time to get agreement about what are we measuring within that particular reduction measure.
I was just going to say, Chris, the challenge in my head has always been, it's a bit like, with buses, for example, if we include emissions from buses in our corporate emissions, but we're also reducing private individuals' emissions. And it's a bit the same with the flood pump stuff as well. In my part of the world, we don't have drainage schemes for various reasons, but you could argue the emissions from the flood or drainage infrastructure could be sheeted back to the individual farmers as well. And look, it's an ongoing conversation, but it's just something we need to be aware of when we're talking about our corporate emissions.
Questions, Pamela?
Thanks for the report, Neville. Just on the website feedback, is that, what does the trend look like there?
It would have been good to put the dashboard up for that particular one to give you the insight. It was more positive the month of May than it was the prior month of April, where we had a negative feedback. Now, staff don't 100% like the measure because it's little pop-up that gives you, requires you to give a little rating. And they feel it's a little bit arbitrary because people are only pushing it if they're disappointed as opposed to they're feeling positive. And but I think it's the best we've got at the moment. It has got room for improvement. Generally, it's because people are trying to find something and they're struggling, and so they will push a zero or a negative indicator. So yeah, it's a very volatile measure at the moment. Relatively recently introduced, and it's been a little problematic since day one. But in the absence of anything better, that's the one that we're sitting with, just to give us a little insight into user sentiment.
So what is that insight going to lead us to do?
Well, it should influence how to, it's more the verbatim. It's always about the verbatims if people are prepared to provide that sort of insight. I think what we'll find is that the structure of the web pages need to be easier, more intuitive, and easier for people to follow to get the information they're seeking. And that's my instinct. That's what it tells me, because I know when I use it, I have that experience myself. And we're all looking for a 1 or 2 click solution. And if you've got to go through multiple clicks, or the hierarchy is odd and isn't logical, then it's going to annoy you. And so ultimately, we want to move to a logical ease of access and interface and accurate up to date. That's the goal.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks. No further questions. If there's not, then we have a mover. Robert, you want to ask a question? Yep.
An interesting question about the emissions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is any of our, when we're doing contracting, outside contracting to do asset renewals or stock bank renewals, is any of that calculated? Is the contractor calculated that they're doing that in, because I know there's a few contractors that have spent large amounts of money to put their machinery up to a high standard now that it's most probably running on AdBlue and everything else, and they're missing out on contracts. So is any of that taken into the account of the valuation of when our contractors are doing work?
You know, I think Janine will be able to answer, because I think it'll be about the sustainability section of the procurement process. But I'll leave it to Janine to qualify. I think that's the key element where this would pop out.
Yeah, thanks, Nev. Through the chair, as part of any tenders that we are doing, there is a category within the evaluation or scoring of those for sustainability, where we would be looking for that type of investment or support, or the work that they're doing, that they can actually call that out within their submission, and that will then be considered in terms of that overall evaluation. It's not everything, but it is between 10 and 15% of the assessment of any request for proposal or tenders that we receive.
Yeah, but the value of someone having that high standard of machinery is most probably worth more than that 10%, and what they've actually spent in having that machinery at a higher standard. I think that most probably needs to be looked at a bit more. Like I know, like if we go and buy a tractor to have AdBlue in it, there's a whole different cost to it than one that doesn't. The cost of the machinery could be $100,000 difference. So what I'm saying is, I don't think I think maybe that needs to be assessed of that contractor that's spending that amount of money on that sort of capital is most probably not valuated enough. That's what I'm just saying. Good point. I know it in my own business what it costs.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak in this forum. Neville, we heard on the end of May presentation by LGNZ that they were revamping or redesigning Te Korawai. Have we had any feedback to them into that space?
Yes, Emma's been providing feedback, and some other councils have also asked for information as well, how the experience went for us, what value we got from it. It will always continue to evolve. It has done since its inception a number of years ago. Personally, I think it was a decision that council didn't make lightly, and the investment was justified, given it's enabled us to get some critical focus on some important areas. But yeah, it will just continue to improve and develop over time.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Neil. If there's no further questions, can I put the question to the floor?
Happy to second.
Seconder. Thanks. You second, Angela. Thanks. All in favour? That gets carried. Thank you. Right. Then next up on the enterprise data strategy update. Morning, Glenn, and welcome to the meeting.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I've got about 3 different copies of the slides just to make sure we don't have a technology malfunction along the way. Thanks very much for the opportunity to have a chat to you about what we're doing around our data strategy as an organisation. So, first slide, please, Jess. So I'm just going to walk you through a few summary points from the paper. So obviously take the paper as read and just to draw a few points out. So just to highlight the purpose of what we're undertaking, it's around looking at doing things in a more consistent way than we have in the past around what we're doing with data for a number of benefits that we think we'll be able to achieve as a consequence of doing so. So our enterprise data strategy puts us in a position to help us to manage our data better so that we can derive more value from it to deliver smarter services for our communities and contribute to the improved outcomes for the Waikato region. So aligning with council priorities is a really important thing. We got stretched resources across the council with regards to our data capabilities, and making sure we target them effectively is an important aspect of the outcome of implementing this strategy. What comes next from that is, next slide, please. Thank you. So how did we end up here? Well, back in 2023, we had an external review of our approach to data, and a number of things were highlighted from that. So a good news story is that we got some really strong data capabilities in pockets around the organisation. So the fact that we've got those practices is a really good thing for us to draw experience from and to build upon. But the fact that those practices are siloed means that there are obvious gaps as well in terms of our capabilities. So the lack of consistency was a theme which came out from that review, and a lack of consistency around the way that our data is governed. So we've got lots of standards and processes in place across the organisation in different pockets, but we're not leveraging the opportunities of working at scale in terms of what we're doing with our data. And there was an identified lack of alignment with some of the strategic imperatives in terms of being able to use our data to inform and track how we're doing and to inform where we might want to take things next. So some of those challenges that we're experiencing are experienced by all regional councils, by the way. So we're by no means behind other councils. We're kind of towards the front of the pack, which is a good place for us to be. And as indeed with other government agencies, that's a positive thing for us to kind of try and stay towards the front, because we don't want to fall behind. We want to leverage opportunities around artificial intelligence and so on. Getting our data management practices is a good foundational step in helping us to do that. So I'd like to thank the executive leadership team as well for their ongoing support for recognising that we need to tackle this and to figure out how to resolve some of those challenges and to implement the recommendations from that 2023 review. The key things that we're aiming to focus on doing. Next slide, please, Jess. We've got 4 strategic data objectives, and they are to resolve some of those challenges around governance of our data. So we want to uplift our data maturity and increase standardization. So to have greater degree of consistency across the organization. That should lead to improved data quality. Consequence of improved data quality, obviously down the line, then that means you can rely on that data and information for better informed decision making down the track and better evidence-based policy. We want to foster a data-driven culture and to grow our data capabilities. So move us away from those silos of expertise to lifting all ships, if you like, with regard to growing some fundamental data literacy skills around the organization. Again, leading us to better quality data, being able to get more insight, more data-informed innovation. Another one is around to support our journey, if you like, with regards to data. We need to modernize the data landscape that we have. So we've invested a lot, of course, in technology solutions in the past, and we'll continue to need to do so. The artificial intelligence opportunities, we want to be able to leverage those, and having good data and having our data managed and supported by good modern infrastructure will make us fit for future challenges that we don't even know about yet, but there are certain current challenges that we need to resolve, like rising costs of data storage, and the opportunities for being able to boost productivity, reusing our data rather than having people recreating the same data sets time and time again. There's quite a bit of inefficiency because people don't quite know where to find data around the organization. So we're trying to remove some of that duplication of effort and rework and to better manage, as I say, those escalating data storage costs. And then a key one is really around enabling and delivering these things we're calling strategic data products. So that's aligning what we're doing with our data and focusing on what's the most important data to our organization, how valuable is that to us and to our communities, and how do we make sure that we are managing that not just for its current operational use, but also for its decision-making, use for the future, and also for its legacy and heritage purposes as well. So there's a number of areas that we want to be focusing on, and focusing on one in particular is not going to get us very far forward. We kind of have to move all 4 along forward at the same kind of time as each other, because they're all complementary. So I started in my current role as, sorry, just next slide, in October. And so we've been getting to work. I've done a lot of staff engagement, spoken to over 180 staff members across the organisation, sharing our vision and strategy around what we're aiming to achieve, and got a lot of positive feedback and enthusiasm for and a desire for wanting to improve. We've set up a data governance working group. So this is around tackling what we do around how we govern and have implementation of policies and standards for our data, coordinated centrally. We've got representation from across the different directorates in the organisation, and we're currently doing a stock take review of existing data policies and standards, and setting up our data governance framework. So that sets us up with the solid foundations for being able to move forward. We're currently working on a roadmap for implementation to take us through the next few years, and that's structured across 3 maturity horizons: establish, enhance, and excel. And we're currently looking at the detailed planning for the establish horizon, and looking to get things, when I come back from holiday in July, be able to get moving to actually start implementing some of those as part of the 2025-26 work programme, and then inform the planning for the annual plan submission for 26-27. And that's the summary of the paper and the summary of where we're up to in terms of my journey on the data strategy so far. And I think it's useful to share this information with you so you're aware of what we're doing.
Thanks very much, Glenn, for that presentation. Interesting. I guess the boreal question of what's this going to cost is my first challenge for you. Has that any thought been given to the total cost of the total rollout of the plan?
That's a good question, and a question that's been on my mind for quite some time, of course, as looking at all of this. We don't yet know that, but that's the purpose of us working through the implementation plan, through that roadmap, to identify, well, how much can we utilize existing resources within the organisation, and what new things might we want to be implementing in terms of costs. So what level of redeployment of existing resources is there, and what new things unlock opportunities for us. I don't have a number for you today, but that's something which will be evolving over the next few months.
Okay, so I guess that leads on to the next question, which you looking at a presentation for the annual plan. Will that include the costings and the business case analysis?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's part of that thinking is around. Certainly for today is to raise your awareness that we've started progress on this, and actually we'll be coming to you with a proper business case and suggestions as for prioritized activities, what those are likely to cost in that submission.
Thanks. And just to pick up on one of your other comments there, you see we're at the front of the pack in terms of the other regional councils around in terms of adopting a strategy. I'm not a great fan of being leader of the pack because it invariably means that you're the guinea pig. That means costing more money. So whereabouts do you think we are in there? Like, I'd prefer, because if you're in the middle of the pack, then you can lean on their knowledge and experience to guide the initiatives that we should be taking here. So could you just comment on that?
Yes, of course. So the regional council sector has got an IS leads function where they all get together and talk about, well, how do we work together to improve and consolidate how we work. And what I would say is that not all of the regional councils are of a scale of ours to have a role such as mine. So there are a number of councils which are frankly struggling and don't have the capacity to be able to even get started on implementing a piece of strategy work like this. We've got other councils like Environment Canterbury, Auckland, kind of in a league of their own, really, but other councils which are much better resourced in terms of data resources, but facing the same kinds of still facing the same kinds of challenges that we are. But by being part of the regional sector and leveraging from those, we're able to dip into experience from other things that people are currently doing or have already done, and to share those ideas. I'm very conscious that we don't want to be a lone wolf right out in front of the pack, but we're in that. I would say we're part of that first pack, if you like, that we're all running together, trying to learn from each other, because we're all in the same boat, and we want to be able to share ideas and thinking as to what's likely to work, or actually learn from things which have failed in the past as well.
Excellent. Thanks for that. The questions, Angela? Sorry.
There you go. What am I?
Sorry.
Either or. Oh, thank you. Just curious, when we talk about data, am I right in my assumption that that includes a whole bunch of organisational information? For example, all the engineering design stuff of our flood protection, stop banks, a lot of our other data we have on catchment and all that sort of thing. Is it sort of pretty much everything?
Yeah, so the approach that we're taking is looking at data as a whole thing. So
Yeah.
that even includes things like drone footage and things like that.
Yeah.
At a higher level, we kind of need to, without getting into the weeds, we kind of need to separate general data for decision-making purposes from information.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's a lot of information that's held in our records management system where we can't currently get into the data that's in those documents because we haven't got all of the optical character recognition programs and the AI associated with that to help dig into that.
Yeah.
But actually diving into that information is going to be really valuable for us, and having the right policies and standards in place allows us to put the right meta tags on a lot of that stuff, so it's easier to find and use.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's good. When I first got on the council, and there was the end of the era when, you know, people stayed in the organisation for their whole lives, and some of our ICM staff were going to rest homes and interviewing the old engineers to understand some of why they'd done certain things the way they had with stop banks and all that sort of stuff, you know. And so I guess this is just a progression of that, which I think is
Angela.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your report. I just had a quick question around your data governance and data security. Could you just tell me how that sort of fits in with your paper?
So we've got so our data governance group reports through to the corporate strategy group. So the purpose of the data and information governance group is to understand and craft the policies for WRC around data and fair use and the security practices we need to be putting in place. And there's a whole range of different aspects. So metadata being a really important one as well, about being able to find our data, security and privacy, of course, really important as part of that. And then to do that stock take around the organisation of what are our current practices and what is the learning pathway for people to uplift those skills, report those then back to the corporate strategy group, and then that through that management structure, then that's the way of cascading the requirements down to the organisation. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, really interested in looking at your data strategy on a page, but I've tried the link in the paper, but it's not working. So yeah, be interested in that after the meeting. So yeah, thank you.
All right. No further questions for Glenn? No. Thank you for that, Glenn. We've no doubt got a resolution. So very much.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Makao, and a seconder. Robbie, thanks very much. So, all in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Glenn, thanks very much for that. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Something to look forward to in the future.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask you, I should have asked a
Sorry,
question.
sorry, Rob.
So in there, would farm plans be stored in there and in the future? I just wanted to.
So the intent of this is to capture all of our important, valuable data in terms of what we're trying to do. So if it's important for heritage, if it's important for operational use, it's important for strategic use and monitoring policy. If that information is important and relevant, then it's definitely should be on our list of things that we need to have covered by the
farm plans is going to be one big bit of data. What is it? How many farmers there are in the Waikato and PC1? So that's going to be a huge piece of data. It's going to have to be managed at some stage.
Yeah, and the privacy and security is really important on that as well, which is making sure that we are treating the data in a respectful way as well. So it's just because the council may be the custodian of the data doesn't mean that we can just use it for any old thing that we want to do. Fair use and making sure we got the right policies in place and people are aware of those policies and trained in those is going to be really aspect of what we do.
The community feel safe in sharing that information with you. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
And it's honest.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
add some more questions to it, but I won't at this stage. All right, so the next item on the agenda is financial performance and monitoring. David, welcome you to the meeting.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, so I'm here to share with you the third quarter financial performance and the Q3 forecast update. So you'll have your report, and so I'll just quickly share some of the highlights, some of the details, and over to you guys for questions. So from a Q3 financial performance perspective, we see ourselves at an operating surplus of just short of $7 million. So this continues the kind of Q2 performance and a favourable position versus our forecasting position. Once we consider the reserve transfers, that gives us a decrease in retained earnings of $775,000 and just short of 1.7 million higher than our forecast. From a revenue perspective, we've seen through Q3 as a result of some of the implications in the financial markets, a lower investment fund performance than we saw through the first half of the year. We've seen lower grants, particularly from NZTA, but noting that they're typically offset by lower costs. And that's been partially offset by continued higher patronage and therefore higher fare revenue. And from an expenditure perspective, our large underrun on that side of things is really driven by biosecurity. And so a lot of that has been rephased through the Q3 forecast into the final quarter of the year. And similar to stories that we've been telling you throughout the year, further delays and the contracted services costs associated with Irish Next Gen Plan Change 1. So again, the majority of these have been reflected and adjusted for through the Q3 forecast. From an infrastructure capital perspective, from a year-to-date point of view, we're just over $8 million spent at the end of March. Combined with the commitments of, again, just short of $8 million, we're 85% of the Q2 forecast spend. You'll note in the report that through the Q3 forecast, we've got a further $2.3 million reduction in our planned capital expenditure program, the bulk of which, just under 2.2, is going to be requested as a carryover. Those adjustments therefore reduce the capital budget for the year to just over $16.6 million. And from a forecast perspective, again, at a high level, we see an increase in retained earnings of $1.775 million. That's driven by a net decrease in our operating revenues of 3.8 million, a reduction in our operating costs of 3.4. As a result of all of these movements, we reduce our reserve balances by 3 million, and we are also reducing our borrowing correspondingly by 1.6. When you consider the Q3 forecast with the Q2 and Q1 forecast, we expect to see an increase in retained earnings for the year of $675,000. I won't go into all of the details. They're all broken down goer by goer within the report. And I guess the other request for this committee is the application of these forecast surplus funds of 675,000. 3 requests there. 460,000 for the implementation of enhanced portfolio management systems and processes. A further 130,000 to progress work with respect to business process management. And 75,000 for provision for strategic procurement advice to review the council's procurement strategy.
Thank you, David. Very happy to see that there is a surplus, and unfortunately, it seems that we've managed to spend it before we receive it. So that seems to be the way of life around here. I personally don't have any questions. I'm very happy that the team have managed to deliver a surplus against the budget, and probably what was going to be a difficult year certainly was when the annual plan was approved. It transpires that controls have been kept on costs and in deliverances. So that's the compliments the whole team, Janine and David and the rest of the directorates. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a couple of comments? I think of one of the forecast items, which was the deferral of a payment for the theatre into next year, obviously with council meeting last week, I think, that will fall we'll wind that one back to enable that payment to be made as agreed once we've varied the funding deed there. The other point I just wanted to make, again, from the discussions at the council meeting last week around the reporting of reserve balances. So that feedback has been received loud and clear. We were hoping to get some information through for this meeting, but just want to make sure that we've got that right. We will commit to bringing that to you in your next meeting, which will be an end of year position for those reserves, as well as noting where council's already agreed to the application of some of that reserve funding through decisions that you've previously made. But I just want to assure the committee we haven't lost that. That is definitely something that we will be working on.
Thanks, Janine. And just for the committee's benefit, that will be updated quarterly. So
Yes, we'll include
we'll
include that as part of the standard reporting that you see. And I know that ICM are also doing some work in terms of some of those reserve balances for ICMC. So I had a conversation with one of the staff on Friday. I just want to make sure that we're aligned with that information that will go forward to the committee. So we're all singing from the same song sheet with that.
Thanks for that, Janine. Now, has anybody else got any questions for David? Get back to work. Not? I'd like to put the resolution to the meeting. Can I have a move with that, please? Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Pamela. All in favour? Hence carried. Thank you, David. Much appreciated. Please don't lose that money on the way up the stairs.
Holes in the pockets.
Right, next item on the agenda is the non-financial performance Q3 update, and Jane is going to present to us. Thank you, Jane. Good morning and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and kia ora koutou councillors. The report presents an update on how council's non-financial performance is tracking at Q3, and it is comparing actual performance with the targets set out in council's long-term plan. There are 50 performance measures in the long-term plan. We're currently reporting against 45 of these, with data not yet available for the remaining 5. At the end of the third quarter, 5 measures have been achieved and 33 are on track to have targets met by 30th of June. The report provides commentary by way of exception. So we're discussing the 7 measures that are currently off track or being monitored based on the expected performance during the remaining quarter of 24-25. The forecast year-end position will see 42 measures achieved and 3 achieved in part. I'll just speak briefly to those 3 measures. So for performance measure 5.1, which is the development of the regional resilience strategy and plan. So this is expected to be achieved in part. The work is progressing and the strategy and plan is expected to be completed by 30th of June. However, these will be subject to committee approval and engagement processes, which will lead into 25-26. Measure 8.11 from Science, Policy and Information, which is the review of infrastructure funding. The project commencement has been delayed, but is now progressing with the procurement process underway. So this is also expected to be achieved in part by 30th of June. And then from ICM, the measure 4.6, which is the percentage of sampled catchment works maintained in effective condition. This is currently tracking below the target of 85%, and there is a level of uncertainty around the outcome of fourth quarter inspections. So that's also expected to be achieved in part. Thanks.
Jane? Very succinct. Any questions for Jane? Angela, you're
Yeah, thank you, Jane.
the chair. Where are you going?
Yeah, just had a few questions around, just checking on the right agenda item, around regional transport. Just checking. So the measures we're using are the latest long-term plan KPI measures.
Correct.
Okay. Just had a question on the measure 6.7. You've got 92% of people satisfied with passenger rail. Based on our passenger surveys, those have come out a lot higher than that. So just checking.
92 is the target.
Yeah, can you just explain how the measure works?
Yeah, so this is a survey that's conducted annually. So at Q3, we don't have that data. So it will be reported in Q4. The target was set for this year at 92%. And I think that was in response to what we're trying to do is incrementally increase that result. So the target will incrementally increase over the next 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, up to 95% in year 3.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just ask Phil to?
So if I can just add to that, that survey has been undertaken in May, and we're awaiting the results for this year, which will feed into the end of year result. Our results for the train have been significantly higher than target, and we've reported on that through the last LTP, but the resetting of the targets into this LTP rise, as Jane has said, but at the moment are being achieved well above that 92% number.
And then just a couple of the other measures. I know through some of the transport subcommittees we've talked about whether some of the on-time performance is across the whole region. It's not really a one-size-fits-all. So just wondering when the next opportunity to sort of review how we measure and those KPIs, whether there's any room to change them, or do we need to wait till the next LTP for those measures?
Yes, so unfortunately that would be through the next LTP that we can make changes to either measures or the targets. I think we noted in there in Q2 there was some disruptions around GPS monitoring, and so there was quite a poor result in Q2. So I think there is, which is why we've noted it is likely to be achieved with some recovery throughout Q3 and 4. But yes, opportunity in 2027 to maybe change the way we report on that slightly.
Through the chair, if I can just add, I think part of the magic, I guess, with these measures is it is as much around the commentary and the story as it is around the actual measure. So if we can explain or provide additional context within the commentary that we report in the annual report, then we have flexibility with that. But as James said, we went through the process of setting these measures and targets as part of the LTP. So they're sort of locked in for that 3-year period, but the flexibility comes around the narrative that we provide in relation to that form.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great to see lots of green. Just yeah, when you dive into the detail, yeah. And just around that storytelling and that commentary. So does that, who gets to tell that story? Is it corporate or?
So these are provided by staff across the organisation who look after each of these measures, and they go through a review process with directors as well. So okay, that commentary kind of fits into the wider picture.
And then just in terms of from an annual report perspective, obviously through an audit process as well to make sure that it is a fair and reasonable view.
That's cool. Thanks for increasing my understanding. Thanks.
Thanks, Angela. No other questions of Jane? If not, the motion to the meeting, non-financial performance resolution be accepted. Move it, please. Thanks, Pamela. All in favour? Right. It's carried. Thank you. Jane, thank you very much for your presentation. And we'll look forward to the wrap up at the end of the year. Thank you. Our team here. Okay, so Makao haven't arrived yet. So would you like, people want to have a break now? So would you rather move on because we're going to public excluded? Yeah, shall we go on to the Treasury Management Monitoring? Are we able to do that, Jim? You're in charge over here, so
Me.
On the right page.
I don't mind.
Yes, so page 96, I'm happy to take this one. In terms of overall fund performance, obviously this quarter has been somewhat more challenging for the fund in terms of investment market performance, but overall the fund has still tracked well against its benchmark for this period. Probably one of the key things to note is that over January and February we have fully transitioned the fund into the new strategic asset allocation and the new fund managers. So that strategy is now fully implemented. It's once in about a decade opportunity to be liquidating a fund of this size and reinvesting it. So the team have done a fabulous job with that. In terms of just some points to note, we still carry the Harbour Enhanced Cash Fund, which was where we were putting money set aside for things like the Regional Development Fund, working capital funds, and the like to de-risk them. So they were still invested, but not exposed to general market conditions. Hopefully before the end of the financial year, we will be effectively closing that fund, drawing that down into working capital, recognising the rate subsidy that is held in there, as well as regional development funds that have been paid from working capital but not yet withdrawn. So that will essentially close that enhanced cash fund in terms of the overall investments that we hold. I just, in terms of borrowing, just note there that is at the end of April, about $39 million. And in May, we took out a short-term commercial paper of $10 million just to meet our cash flow requirements. So that's got a 3-month duration at the moment. In terms of our overall borrowing program, with the reforecast that's been done, that's projected to reach about $60 million. I think, as I've noted with the committee previously, we're not seeing that value coming through our borrowing at the moment because we have been utilising working capital funds in favour. It is my intention that we reset that, and so we have our borrowing program standing on its own 2 feet, and then we have our working capital funds that are truly working capital. Alongside that, though, means that we are very much looking at the level of borrowing that it makes good sense for us to attain a credit rating. And so we're continuing those conversations with PwC as our Treasury advisors. They will assist us with going to market for some proposals for that. And in the meantime, keeping renewal of any borrowing that we're required to do to the short term, so that once the credit rating's in place, once we're rolling borrowing over, we're actually able to take advantage of the lower interest rates that that credit rating enables us to access. But that's probably the key points that I just wanted to note out of this report. Perfect timing of the Makao team to provide more information around the investment fund itself, but happy to take any questions from councillors on that, on the staff paper.
Thanks very much for that, Janine. I'd just like to pass on my thanks for the team's ability to generate an arbitrage between our money interest we're receiving and what your borrowing rates are. Which, I know it's probably at the end of the day is not a huge amount of money, but it all adds up. So, good effort there. And yes, that follows on from the advice you'd had earlier on from PwC. So that's like to record my appreciation of that. But I don't have any other comments on it. Has anybody else got any comments? If not, I'll put the resolution to the meeting. I have a mover for that, please. Thanks, Stu. Thanks, Pamela. All in favour? Aye, against, carried. Thank you. Morning, gentlemen. I think we'll carry on. Monitoring report from
So page 87. the agenda.
87. Right. Now the floor is yours. We'll need to have a pause after the first stage, so we're going to public excluded. So, thank you.
Well, kia ora all. Thank you for having us. We'll jump straight in, unless there's any kind of immediate questions, just to the performance report. So flicking to the first page, page 1. And I guess first draw attention up to the top right, the observations. There's been a few things, I won't go through word by word, but a few things just to draw your attention to. So one of the main changes in the quarter was the change in the strategic asset allocation. So in January and February, there were some trades that moved the portfolio from a 40-60 split of income at 40%, growth, sorry, other way, income at 60%, growth at 40%, and it was switched around. So now growth's at 60% and income's at 40%. So there was that kind of material shift in the asset allocation. That did happen earlier in the quarter, kind of January, February. There were some trades then, and I'm sure, as you all know, there was then some volatility later in the quarter. So there was kind of some unfortunate timing just when that shift occurred, and around really the volatility and the uncertainty from the US trade policy, President Trump, what happened there. So even though that, his Liberation Day happened in April, which was after this quarter end, there was some volatility and uncertainty that kind of in the lighter parts of March in particular did cause some volatility, and equities really were hit hard or were hit down. I will have a little bit more around kind of what we think going forward in terms of just that more recent performance. But yeah, that was kind of a bit of an unfortunate timing there. Luckily though, in drilling a bit further down, the change in asset allocation towards some more infrastructure, global bonds, that did actually have a really good diversification effect and some good relative performance. So that was a good change that happened in that strategic asset allocation change. Another thing, that the return objective also was updated. So it was inflation +3, now it's inflation +3.5, and that's just reflected up in the top left corner. And the other change down, if we look at the bottom chart, the strategy journey, we've now also included a funnel chart just to kind of show, long term. Again, we're only a quarter in, so it's early days, but it's a funnel chart to show expected kind of portfolio and kind of good, bad outcomes. Moving to page 2. Top left shows the portfolio value. So just over 100 million for the end of the March quarter, and it did drop a little bit. You can see there was some positive net cash inflows, but also some negative investment performance of, call it down 2 million. Looking over a year, you do see that strong investment gains of 3.5 million. So longer term, the investments are actually providing value and they are growing well. Further down, the asset class breakdown, again, it reflects that new asset allocation. So defensive assets now at 40% target, growth at 60, and the portfolio is there or thereabouts as expected with the recent change. There is a little bit, it is slightly overweight defensive assets, but 1.5%, nothing of concern there. Moving to page 3, the actual returns. So top left shows the percentage returns. So for the quarter, the portfolio did drop in net return 1.83, but pleasing, the benchmark was actually down 1.94. So it did actually outperform that benchmark over the quarter and again over the year. So some good performance there relative to the benchmark. The target again has been updated now to inflation +3.5. So it has underperformed that target, but when you look over a longer term, it is relatively not as bad. Down the attribution analysis really shows some strong performance from the asset allocation and security selection part. Primarily that was driven from the global bond funds, so Colchester and PIMCO. Moving to page 4, from an asset class level, So I won't go through all the numbers because there's a lot to cover there, but just a few to kind of draw your attention to. Global equities, were hit, so they were down for the quarter, but over the longer period, some really strong performance there. Real assets or primarily infrastructure in that asset class had a really strong quarter. So, it was up 5%. So even though equities were down, those real assets did well. Similar with global bonds, again, not such high kind of absolute numbers, but positive. So they did well for the quarter. Then you've got your cash holding there. Moving to page 5 at a manager level. So the 3 Vanguard funds are passive. They closely follow their benchmark. So, as they should. So no issues there. Interestingly, the unhedged, which is the top fund, did slightly better than the New Zealand hedged, and that was just primarily due to the New Zealand dollar strengthening against the US. Down the bottom, you've got listed infrastructure, so that's that real asset piece there. Again, a strong performance, particularly over that 1 year period, up 8%. Moving on to page 6, the last couple of other managers. So PIMCO Global Bonds and Colchester Government Bonds, really strong, particularly Colchester. They were up almost 1.5% over their benchmark for the quarter. So, really good move. And again, that was part of that strategic shift. That is it. So, happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thanks very much for that, Luke. I've just got a couple of questions. The weighting, as you've identified, is slightly out of balance with the SIPO at the moment. Is that because of the changes in the market? Is that correct assumption or not?
Primarily, yes. So we're right. When we did the shift earlier in the quarter, but then you're right. So generally, cash or defensive assets, bonds and things have done well, so they've held up, and that's why they're slightly overweight. Versus your equities, which have kind of been hit a bit harder during this volatility, so they're a little bit underweight.
And how often do you review the weightings? That becomes a trend.
In terms of the rebalancing?
Yes.
So there is a rebalancing range. So if we flick over on page 2, you can see the rebalance range off it's on the asset class breakdown, the bottom left,
okay,
and on the right-hand column. So within 3 or 4% plus or minus, they're all well within that.
So question is, if that was to endure for another month or 2 months, what triggers an action by you to rebalance?
We're assessing this on a quarterly basis,
okay.
and if there's a need to rebalance, we would advise the council to do trades to bring the asset allocation back in line with the strategic allocation.
Okay, thanks for that, Noah. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'd like to move the resolution. Would I have a second for that? Thanks, Stu. All in favour? Aye, against, carried. So that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which we need to go into public excluded for. So if you'll just bear with us for a couple of minutes, and Jess will. I've got a resolution, sorry. Can I move for the resolution? Thanks, Robbie. I'll second it. Favour? Carried. Right, thank you. I think you put me up on that. Yes, let us know when you're free.